Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Dr. Rachel Cameron with us today. Rachel's a lot of things. She's a STEM leader. She's an international board C-suite and executive searcher. She's uh, all about social impact, clean tech, patient advocate, and has huge experiences, which we're going to discuss today in detail. This podcast is brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start a lead gen machine with the win-win approach and not direct selling, which is frowned upon nowadays, you can go to podpire.com. We help you invite a bunch of your potential clients on a podcast, talk with them, and convert them into clients the nice way. So podpire.com. Rachel, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Oh, thank you, Charles. Well, I'm only just back from Antarctica. I went to Antarctica for nearly 4 weeks on a global international STEM leadership program. It was the second part of the program. The first part was online, which I went to in 2022 during the pandemic. I was very busy during that time, working to help Australia get out of lockdown from COVID. But in the Antarctica program, which was the immersive piece, I was with 123 other leaders from around the globe that are interested in climate change and projects to actually, at a leadership level, do more to protect the health of the world.
Wow. Well, let's start with COVID. You have a PhD in medicine, infectious diseases, and chemical engineering. COVID was pretty hard for Australia. What was your first person account overview of it, and how did you help Australia get out of COVID?
Yeah, look, it was there was a lot of things happening for me at that time. I actually started a health tech startup to help people with a new cancer diagnosis, and I opened that business February 2020, which was actually pretty bad timing because nobody could get a diagnosis in Australia for almost that whole year. So what I did, because of my virology background and operational experience, I sent my CV to the Victorian Health Department. And so my first role in the pandemic was I led a team of 70 contact tracers before we had vaccines in Australia. So the contact tracers that I led, my team was the workplace team. So we traced planes, trains, automobiles, restaurants, cafes, and things like that. So my teams were interviewing people and tracing until we got vaccination. So I actually pivoted 6 months into that, where I was doing the contact tracing, and I knew as a virologist we needed to vaccinate Australia. So I then went to work for the Federal Health Department on a contract, and I was the director of operations. And what I did was build a team of 80 operations staff, and I had 1,500 field staff, which were nurses, doctors, and pharmacists that went across Australia. My teams went all over. 1,500 staff were sent everywhere except Antarctica, actually, Charles.
Wow. Okay. You're talking about Antarctica. So I talked with a CEO 2 weeks ago that was going there, mostly for tourism purposes, but there's always, I would call it social tourism when you're going to places like Antarctica. It was pretty luxurious. The cruise, I added it to my list of destination, looked amazing. They would actually visit where Sir Ernest Shackleton boat got stuck, and that was quite amazing for me to know that there was such a trip. Why Antarctica in your case, and has it been affected by the global warming in the last couple of decades?
Yeah, look, Antarctic tourism used to attract about 3,000 people a year, and now Antarctic tourism attracts 100,000. I'm now an Antarctic ambassador because I have been there, but also I did go to the US Palmer Station and talk to the scientists there, and I was on a chartered expedition with 124 leaders. So we weren't on a holiday. We had a lot of content on board, but also we did do specific landings which are in the context of the biosecurity in and around avian influenza. There's very specific rules. Not a lot of the tourists necessarily land, so some of those boats just cruise around and look at icebergs, whereas we had specific activities that we were doing. So the thing about Antarctica is Antarctica protects the world. It keeps the world cool. It controls the ocean currents. It also creates the seafood food chain. So anyone who eats seafood, the seafood is all fed from krill. So krill is located around Antarctica. So in terms of major impacts that I was able to witness while I was there last week was that the krill stocks are dropping significantly, and they're being replaced by, so krill are like little shrimp or prawns, and they feed the penguins, they feed other birds and mammals, including whales, and the krill stocks are dropping through the heating oceans and also fishing. And the krill is being replaced by a different organism. It's a little round thing. It's quite clear. It's got a little pink centre called a salp. And so those salps don't feed seabirds and penguins and whales and so on. So that's a really obvious change. There's also melting icebergs. There's changes to the plants and animals. So penguin species are moving around and things like that. So there's a lot of evidence of climate change in Antarctica. It is doing its best to hold up and protect us, but it is important to protect it and learn and do science in and around what Antarctica does for our health of the world.
And how could biotech potentially help fix climate change? I've seen a massive movement in Europe in clean tech, and VCs are very invested in the cause, right? And last week or the week before that, I interviewed the CEO of 1% for the Planet, which is co-founded by Yvon Chouinard, the Patagonia CEO. And it was super interesting to see all the momentum that we're gathering, but apparently it's not enough. So where do you see biotechs and startups specifically in fixing the full global warming issue?
Yeah, look, the thing about the technology in and around biotech, what it offers as a potential series of solutions, because it's a really complex context we're talking about. The things that biotech could offer include better food production, better fuel use and fuel byproducts, as well as better health. So understanding the health impacts through life sciences products and services. So the technology that is generated through startup or biotech industries could create fantastic solutions for the future. So it's important to support, in particular, life sciences, but also agri-science, and because that's related to food, and the environmental science, all intersect. So supporting that is very important for the health of the world.
Right. And nowadays you're into so many things, right? Well, you helped with COVID, now the environment, you're also into recruiting. What does a day in your life looks like when you wake up? Do you segment your days in multiple spaces so that your brain is fully focused on one field at a time?
Yeah, look, time is my most precious resource, which is what also I appreciate with my C-suite that I work with and the boards. So what I try to do is segment, as you say, and be focused on the task at hand that I have. And, you know, in my day, I'm doing a mixture of things because I have my active consulting business, I'm doing my headhunting business, I'm also on an aged care facilities board, I also volunteer and mentor and so on and so forth. So in order to do effective work, I focus on what I'm doing at the time and have a good calendar.
Tell me about the future CEO. Will they be managing a bunch of AI agents, and what will happen to the workforce as an HR expert?
Look, most excellent CEOs are very iterative as they are, and they are generally good at people leading and being strategic. So using AI technology in a HR context to manage existing staff and have AI agents is something that the future CEOs and current CEOs are looking at, how they can have the capability to do that and integrate that into the business. So the ones that are keeping abreast of all of that are going to be setting themselves up to be very effective in the future, I'd say, Charles.
Right, and I forgot to ask you about how did the Antarctica trip change you? What did it change in you once when you came back?
Well, I'm only just back, so a lot of things happened on the voyage. So I'm still processing, and I've got thousands of photos and videos of a lot of animals, and also my cohort and the faculty, which are amazing people. So I'm still processing, but in general, I'm really energized by going to Antarctica. Look, I could have easily stayed there, like the rest of my life, but
Really?
it was so beautiful and so amazing. Really, one of the best experiences of my life. But I do know that I have to keep doing good work in the world. So I've come back and I'm energized to use my education, knowledge, skills, and experience to keep doing good work in the world and try to do, or no, there is no try, but affect impact in climate change and policy and the way we operate at a global level.
And what's the way that hard charging CEOs can have a good impact on the environment? Because when you think of testosterone, it burns, right? It burns the planet in the end a lot. How can we include the social aspect in our mind? How can we first understand that it's our home, and how can we take that energy and invest it in a good cause like this one as hard charging CEOs?
Look, I think CEOs have a lot of influence because they have, usually they've got financial means to make choices, and they are strategic people. And so where you put your funds, where you invest your money, and so ESG investments, so organizations and corporations and tech that's actually doing good, producing good products, services, and cleaner technologies is a really good way that CEOs can do something at home. So one of the things as an Antarctic ambassador, I need to look at everything I do in my life and continue to explain and change the way and iterate the way I live my life. I've got choices because I have the financial means, the education, and the opportunity to change. So communicating that to others is something that CEOs can do, and also looking at what they're using, what they can reuse, what they don't need to use, is a choice or a series of choices that CEOs can actually put into their toolkit to do more for the world.
Do you feel that AI will have a good or negative impact on environment?
That's a hard question. I think there's some good sides and some bad sides. There's a risk benefit, depends on the areas of AI. So, for example, I might give an example in my area. So, I've done a lot of work on developing new medicines in my career. So I've worked in big global pharma, smaller Australian biotech, ASX listed, NASDAQ listed entities that are generating new medicines. And medicines for complex diseases cost a lot of money and they take a lot of time to develop. So using AI to predict how successful a clinical trial can be can really make a clinical business much more profitable and make investors happy. So the AI use in the clinical trial context is excellent. But then some of the other areas of AI in terms of misrepresenting people. So using people's identities or things like that certainly could be very difficult from a social impact perspective to manage for CEOs and other leaders going forward. So there's some, really great things that AI is doing. And one of the things most recently in life sciences that I really can't get my head around, but it's such a great use of AI was a organisation used to take 6 to 8 years to get the structure of a protein. Using AI now, the whole of every protein, which is about 200 million, have been identified using AI technology, which, compared to 6 to 8 years to do one protein molecule, that's quite remarkable what that's done.
And yeah, related to that, the Miss Hassabis won the Nobel Prize last year, one of my favorite entrepreneurs with AlphaFold. Do you feel that they would be the number one leaders in the field to actually fix major problems in life sciences, such as understanding and preventing and healing cancer, for example? Do you think that DeepMind would be that company, or are there other contenders?
Well, the thing is, it's a bit like the human genome. Like once they sequence the human genome, that's like a directory of what we've got. Their catalogue now is extensive. I guess it depends on what because just having the protein structure is one thing, but you've got to know what it does, like the mode of action or how that plays out in the body. So understanding the functional aspects of the proteins is the next step. So if they do that themselves, well, amazing, but they may need to partner with other organizations or therapies to work those things out. So having the structure is the starting point.
I want to ask you, finishing this off, what are you reading nowadays? How are you still growing this brain of yours?
Well, I have got quite a lot of interesting books and on my bedside table. So what I'm reading at the moment was recommended by somebody who is a dietitian, masters in dietetics, and she's reading a book called Fiber Fueled about how plant-based diets are actually really good for our health. That's a New York Times bestseller. I'm halfway through that. I would have liked to get a bit further along in my Antarctica voyage, but I'm finding that book really interesting because it talks about plant-based diets being very good for our health, but also, of course, they're good for the environment. So that's one I'm reading at the moment. I have quite a lot of other books on my to-do list, but that one's at the top. So I'm hoping to finish that by the weekend.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on today. Where can people find out more about you?
Look, probably the best place would be my LinkedIn. They can connect with me there. I do have an Insta account, so I will put those details in the account. I also use Blue Sky. I've moved away from X, as have my my international cohort. I was in Antarctica. We all moved to Blue Sky.
Which is a good move. I'm doing the same. Thank you so much. That was Rachel Cameron. And